Test. Terrorist. Testeroni. Test. I wish I could sing and play at the same time. This is very basic beat, so it's fairly easy. But if you ask me to play something more complicated, oh, that even threw me off. I would miss a whole bunch of notes. Yeah, yeah. Shy, what's up? Luis, what's up? Rebooted. I gotta reconfigure these. I'm not gonna get another double pedal until I actually get good at playing the double pedal. Never upgrade until the upgrade is worth it. I'm new to double pedal, so you know, like when I say new, like maybe a few months. I am back. I'm out of practice, way out of practice, but I've been chilling the whole this holiday, Thanksgiving, whatever season. I've just been chilling, relaxing. Whoa! I just saw a guy just get smacked by a car. The dude was riding a scooter. I mean, when I say smacked, he got T-barred. He was going this way, the car went, bow! Crazy. Jordan, what's poppin'? What is poppin'? I gotta make you a mod. I've been going, and well, yeah, I've been going. I'm finally getting over the hump of this whole post C19 After Effects stuff, so starting to feel a little better. What you been up to, bro?
Oh!
I just went ahead and made you a mod. Might as well. I wanted to do it now before I forgot, so. What do you want to hear? Keep in mind, the songs the songs you like, I may not even know. Everybody has their own personal playlist of music. Wow, that's sad. I'm looking at it's kind of like a high-rise building, raging on fire. This is kind of crazy. Gap Band. Gap Band is kind of basic. There are no Gap Band licks. They're all like basic R&B funk drums, like this, Burn Rubber. That's the same. That's like that's the same thing as Knee Deep. Burn rubber on me, Charlie. Oh no! All that stuff is the same. All that R&B stuff, it's literally all the same. It all comes from Parliament Funkadelic. It's all that loose that P funk, you know what I mean, kind of. George kept it 4 on the floor. So that means, what's his name? Tiki Fullwood, the original drummer of P-Funk. Dennis Chambers took Tiki's place. Actually, he took Tiki Fullwood and the percussionist, I can't remember his name, took his place too. Then you got Sugarfoot, same thing. The difference between what George wanted and what Sugarfoot did is a triplet. Now, Sugarfoot wasn't the first time I heard it. First time I heard it was with Led Zeppelin. Good times, bad time. that stuff is just basic. Um, it was more about the instrumentation and like the whole unit. And plus, when you're playing in bands like the Gap Band, or like Earth, Wind, and Fire kind of would kind of mix it up. You know what I mean? They sped it up a little more and they had more of a jazz edge. But a lot of 70s funk was really four on the floor. You have that's loose funk. Now tight funk is this. Or another band that had really a tight funk feel was Dave Garibaldi and Tower of Power. You know what I mean? But that's all that tight James Brown funk. So you have tight funk and you have loose funk. The modern version of that is basically stretch music. Now, loose funk stretch music is tight. Loose. Now, it's the same concept, it's just different approaches. The James Brown thing was more of it was a necessity. It had to be tight because, first of all, James had some high energy stuff, number one. Or you might get the reason why the music had to be that tight is because he had Javo Starks on drums and Clyde Stubblefield. So when you got two drummers, that part is actually two drummers. One guy going, the other guy's going. Put them together. Really, that's how it should be. If these snares were tuned kind of the same, you know what I mean? So, but the way tight funk kind of came about was it was a necessity. James wanted to hear both drummers sound like one unit. Now, as far as P-Funk, the loose kind of four on the floor, even when it's fast. It's got like a slight bounce to it, but it's just loose and relaxed. Well, number one, you had one drummer, so it was easier. And it's even Stevie Wonder kind of dabbled in that, like Superstition. was written by Jeff Beck. A lot of people don't know that. Google it. Superstition was written by Jeff Beck. It got more famous with Stevie Wonder. Stevie and Jeff were in the studio, and they were kind of collaborating on some things. And Stevie heard Jeff playing the riff in another room, in the other, like in the studio, just messing around. And then Stevie was like, "I like that. Keep playing that." So Jeff literally made the song up right there in the studio. And Jeff came out with it first. It didn't get popular. Stevie was more popular to mainstream music. So Jeff's kind of, Jeff was, he was a rock guy, so it's kind of niche. Whereas when you got pop acts like Stevie Wonder, which was the beauty of Stevie, was he was a incredible songwriter. He played multiple instruments, but he was a pop artist. That's what's crazy. He was a progressive, like in today's terms, he would be seen as almost like, he was not almost progressive, and he was a pop artist. But I mean, same thing with what's his name? Oh man, I had the album when it came out. Peter Frampton, his live album, Frampton Comes Alive. The thing about Peter Frampton was he was not only that album made him a pop artist. He was kind of niche rock. He was just a rock guy. But he was a really good guitarist, still is. So he was kind of like progressive in terms of pop. Like, I like all music, even the stuff nowadays, but it's not challenging. Like somebody asked, "Can you play Billie Eilish?" I want to be polite, but I almost laughed at him. I'm like, I don't need, it's really easy. You want to play, if you want to hear Billie Eilish, like you could play it. Like it's nothing challenging. So, but, and I think music is getting that, it's going back to that. People are tired of pop drivel. They're tired of just meaningless music. And if you're young and you're listening to me, you might be like, "Oh no, it's never gonna be the same." Yes, it will. Yes, it will. I'm almost 60. I've seen a lot. I've seen music go through phases, and and a lot of people. I've literally experienced this when like New Jack Swing kind of came out. But once they started using hip hop tracks for R&B, a lot of musicians just stopped playing. They just became auto mechanics and stuff like that. For me, I was playing guitar before I played anything. I played guitar. And then I played piano, and then I played drums. And I only played drums because I don't know if y'all remember Family Matters. I looked just like Steve Urkel, except I had bad skin. I entered puberty pretty early, so I had hair on my face. So I was shaving by the time I was 11. I hit puberty early. So by the time I hit 13, I had razor bumps and just braces, and I was a mess. I was a nerdy dude, like a really, really nerdy dude, glasses. I was a nerd. And I wanted to be cool. So there was a cool guy who played drums. And they had like a little house band, a little garage band. and we were watching him practice, and I was like, yeah, I play drums, lying through my teeth. So I ended up playing drums because I had to prove the lie. So I got a bunch of spackle buckets and Tupperware bowls and boxes. And remember them hangers? Remember the hangers that had the cloth and they had the piece of metal? I mean, the piece of wood. It was like a piece of metal that had cloth on it. It was covered in cloth, and it was like real nice and frilly and whatnot. And then the metal went down and looped like that, and that's where the piece of wood was. It was like a long, skinny stick. Well, I took some of those, and those were my drumsticks. And I just started playing drums, like I said, to keep up the lie, because the social embarrassment of lying and saying that I played drums when in fact I didn't. I couldn't face it, so I forced myself to learn how to play. And I got obsessed. I got so obsessed with not wanting to die a social death, I just got really, really good. And I'm hyper competitive. So now I was like, man, I'm better than him. Man, I'm better than him. I'm better than him. I'm better than him. So I just started, was like, I just want to be the best. You know what I mean? So yeah, right now, I'm actually still upholding a lie of me being able to play drums. This is a lie, which is funny. But I forgot what I was going to say. I forgot what that was all about, but whatever. Well, the thing about 70s style music is, in the 60s, Miles was real big on fusion. The thing about Miles is, man, he was always on some what's the next stuff, what's the new stuff. And he would hop on other genres of music, and critics hated it, man. Especially jazz critics. Jazz critics are really, really selfish and stingy and elitist and all of that stuff. And it's partly because of the nature of jazz. It takes a lot. You got to learn a lot. You have to learn. You have to be educated at the level of a classical musician, but you have to play that stuff off the cuff. You got to improvise, and not only do you have to improvise, but you have to make it sound like you meant to do it. So you're bringing order out of chaos and nothingness. Over years of just like playing and playing and playing jazz and playing all different kinds of music, the basic concept is learn the form of the song, but don't learn it note for note. Learn the form of the song, and then you can pretty much do it. It's like coloring in the lines. You know what I mean? If somebody gives you a bunch of lines, you're like, okay, I could put blue here. I could give her blue hair and give her pink eyes and make her skin green like the chick on Star Trek. You know what I mean? Like, you can do what you want as long as you're in the lines. That's what jazz is. But it's not easy because for instance, it's not easy because you have to have a big vocabulary to be able to efficiently color within the lines and not sounding like you're a fool. But yeah, that's not hard because you have to have a deep catalog to pull from, and it's if you get guys like Jack DeJohnette, who his motto was to never play the same thing twice ever, and everybody naturally has their own favorite lick. So that's the genius of Jack DeJohnette. And Jack DeJohnette's the father of just like modern jazz comping anyway. Jack DeJohnette and Tony Williams. Then you got guys like Billy Cobham who who was like Chop's monster. And then you got guys like, of course, Buddy Rich, who always he brought his thing there. Paul Motion, Max Roach. Everybody kind of put into the concept of drums. But unless you study those guys, you're not going to improvise. You're not going to improvise. And the thing about jazz is you have to be able to, like when somebody's playing a solo, as a drummer, you gotta push the music. You might start off like this. Like for instance, I'll play Nardis. Now, somebody's soloing. I'm gonna start pushing it. You know what I mean? Like you slowly increase the tempo. Like incrementally. Really, almost to where it's kind of imperceptible. But the person soloing can feel the energy, and it kind of pushes them to go further and to go further and to go further. But in order to do that, you got to have a deep vocabulary. What I was just playing was pulling from everybody. Everybody from Mac Roach to Paul Motion to Buddy Rich to whoever. But you got to study that stuff. And I say all that to say, because you studied and studied and studied, learning, one of the drawbacks of learning, if there is a drawback, is it's harder to be humble. It's easy to become an elitist. It's very easy to become an elitist because knowledge, like even if in the Bible, it says knowledge puffs up. Knowledge gives you the big head. I'm not anti-knowledge. I'm pro-humility. You know what I mean? Understanding that you not hot stuff. You think you're the best in your circle. There's always some guy that nobody knows about that's better than you. But that's where that elitist kind of thing came around in jazz. So when Miles was breaking away and he was supposed to have an album, he was supposed to do a joint album with Jimi Hendrix. Hendrix died, of course. But Miles started getting young guys who were kind of straddling the fence between funk and jazz and all that stuff. And, I mean, he was playing, like, they were surprised. They're like, Miles, what are you listening to? He's like, I'm listening to Sgt. Pepper. They're like, what? You know what I mean? They kind of thought he was crazy. Years later, now that he's dead, people are like, oh, well, he was a genius, so, but I say all that to say, by the time the 70s came around, the fusion era had happened. And a lot of guys were just, there was a high level of integrity in musical integrity in music in the 70s. Because it was about, like, you had to have your stuff. Like, you had to really be good. For instance, this guy, Narada Michael Walden, he took when Billy Cobham left, Mahavishnu, Billy Cobham, who, if you don't know who he is, if you're a rock guy, thank Billy Cobham. If you play double bass, you're a rock and roll guy, thank Billy Cobham because everything you play is from him. It is what it is. Get offended all you want. Just do your homework. You know what I mean? Just do your homework. All that double bass stuff came from Billy Cobham. All this, you know what I mean? Only he was doing it faster. He everything he did with his hands, he did with his feet. You know what I mean? But he's like the godfather of that stuff. But he left Mahavishnu's orchestra. Mahavishnu Orchestra with John McLaughlin and all those guys. Jan Hammer, um, who did a joint album with Neil Sean from Journey. Neil Sean's an incredible guitarist. But when he left, Danny Gottlieb joined the band. Gottlieb left and joined Journey with Neil Sean. Danny Gottlieb, the guy who not only played with Mahavishnu, but he also played with Pat Metheny. That whole first album with Pat Metheny, Jaco Pastorius, and Danny Gottlieb. That one album, I can't remember the name of it. The song, it's a famous song. It's off the title track. It's with all the harmonics and stuff. But so he's a certified jazz guy. But he was playing with Journey, a pop act. Not Billy Cobb. Narrator Michael Walden. He took Danny Gottlieb's place. Narrator, when he left Mahavishnu, he started doing production, and he did songs with Whitney Houston, and he did songs with everybody. Narrator did songs with everybody. Average White Band, tons of bands. So his hands were in the pot. He was doing production up until the 90s. But there was a lot of cross pollination. You know what I mean? There was a lot of cross pollination. It was at a time where you had Rise by Herb Alpert. You know what I mean? And that was after his Herb Alpert Tijuana Brass. And then you had Chuck Mangione. He had pop songs. These are jazz guys who have pop songs. Then you had so many pop guys. What's his name? Dave Valentine, Herbie Mann, who they're both flautists. They had pop stuff. There was somebody. You had bands like Average White Band, Earth, Wind and Fire, all jazz guys. This one band that's popping in my head, man. I can't remember the name of them. But you had the Jamaica Boys, who were literally jazz guys. They were jazz session guys, only session guys, and they just wanted to make music. Make money, really, to be honest. So it was really, there was a lot of cross pollination of styles, jazz and fusion going into the pop realm, so music in the 70s was different, you know what I mean? First of all, what's his name? Of course, you had Hendrix, but you had Jeff Beck, he didn't know if he wanted to be a jazz guitarist, fusion guitarist, or a rock guitarist. He played everything. You had Jimmy Page, who, although was a rock guitarist, he was really good. He was an innovative guy. You know what I mean? And what's his name? John Paul Jones was a session guy. He played everything from jazz to blues to rock to everything. John Bonham could have easily been a soul drummer, easily. He was like insanely funky. And he had technique, man. Bonham was that dude. You know what I mean? So music, and then by the late '70s, you had Eddie Van Halen, who he completely chopped off everybody's heads and made all the guitarists like start over. If you wrote songs, even his song structure was just something. It was something else. So '70s music was like really, really. It was a really innovative period. Then and of course you had Herbie Hancock. Um, he was all over funk and jazz as well as pop music up until like he helped shape the sound of the '80s. With his song Rocket and that whole album. Um, but there was a lot of cross pollination between pop music and R&B music and funk and jazz. So, the '70s were an interesting time in terms of music. Like. So yeah, it was. Swifty, what's up? Are you a Swifty? Sorry, I don't have my glasses on. I don't know how to pronounce your name, but what's up? band, I'll say this, one band that really took advantage, and in a good way, of the cross pollination of jazz and pop and rock was Steely Dan. They took advantage of all that. They were like, oh, all you jazz guys want to come over and play pop music? Okay, I'll hire you, I'll hire you, I'll hire you. They wouldn't have musical chairs, they would have musical bands. That's Rick Marotta's quote. They asked him, how is it playing with Steely Dan? He's like, bro, they wouldn't switch out one or two. Like, they didn't have musical chairs. They had musical bands. They would have guys, completely different lineup. The only thing they had in common was Becker and Fagan playing everything. They put the charts in their face and be like, play this. And they'd be like, okay, well, see you guys tomorrow. And they'd have a whole band record all of the same songs, completely whole band, different band. And they different bass, everything, backup singers, everything. And they'd be like, oh, okay. And then they would just be like, oh, I like this one from group one, but I like this guy and this guy from group two. And like in group three, I like this, I like the two singers, but I want Michael McDonald from group two on this. Like they would just like, but that's like, if you got the pick of the litter, that's what you're supposed to do. You know what I mean? You're supposed to take advantage of the situation in terms of creating the best viable product that like you know that you, because they knew they could write pop songs. It's just that they had a level of musical integrity that they were like, no, you gotta be good. And plus they wrote a lot of really complex stuff, you know, which is, you know, the genius of how they composed. They wrote deceptively complex stuff where it sounded good on the radio until you tried to play it. And you're like, wait a minute, this is like what? Or you tried to, they came up with their own, the mu major chord. They came up with their own chord. Like, this is after thousands of years of people playing chords. You know, so I'll say about 900 years, at least. Probably longer than that. Probably about 1,000 years. But you know, they took full advantage of that cross pollination. You know, another person, which a lot of people don't like him, but this is part of his genius. He writes the same. The thing about Kanye West. Kanye West, the reason why he composes his songs, his beats, like he'll have, instead of sampling a string section, he'll be like, no, I'm gonna hire a string section to play it. And to play it the way I hear it, the way I want it to be played. Or like, you know, he went from just using like an MPC and chopping samples to, like, he would just hire dudes just, you know, he would just hire these whole bands to, you know, he would hire whole bands to play certain things and then take that and loop and sample that, like crazy stuff. You know what I mean? But yeah, Kanye's a once in a lifetime guy, man. He's a crackpot. You know, I ain't with the racism stuff, and the anti-Semitism. I'm like, bro, like you're nuts. Like I don't know. But the guy's a genius. But there's a fine line between genius and insanity. So, you know, he's a nut. There's a reason why he's a nut job. When you're thinking that high level about music, you know. But yeah, Steely Dan, yeah. They're like my all-time favorite band. One of, anyway. Van Halen, Steely Dan, Earth, Wind and Fire, P-Funk, the JBs, a few other bands. I usually just I like a lot of musicians per se, not a lot of bands. Well, yeah, like Zeppelin, of course, Blizzard of Oz, which Ozzy's band, of course, Maiden, of course, Metallica, of course, um, Emerson, Lake and Palmer, yes, Rush, of course. Rush, I learned every song from Rush from the first album Neil was on, Fly By Night, up to Signals, which is about 12 albums, note for note, every single song. Even the bootlegs, because back when I came up, you could actually buy bootleg vinyl. Like the sound guy would just record all this stuff, go to a local spot, get all that stuff pressed up onto vinyl, and sell it at mom and pop stores. So you'd hear all the live versions, all kind of stuff. When I came up, like you could get like live Police, you know what I mean? And they would play it on the radio. They'd play the live versions on the radio. I don't know how much they were allowed to do that, but yeah, it's just crazy, you know. But yeah, you know, I'll be honest, you're not gonna talk trash, and I'm not gonna go back and forth with you. You know, if you're that desperate to see somebody play, I mean, film yourself or whatever. But I like to play, and I think people are kind of tired of playing after a while. I mean, like how much chop it up, chop it up, chop it up. People want to know what's behind. Like, how do you do this? How do you do that? Where does this come from? Where does that come from? So you gonna cuss at me? Okay, bye. practice. All right, I got to get out of here. Yo, I'll say this. If you were standing in front of me, you wouldn't say it. Because I'd punch you in the mouth. And you know that. So why are you flexing like now? Like, I'd hurt you. I really would. I'd die trying. I really would. You're a coward, bro.